Welcome to Church 3.0, presented by Apollos, a podcast where we explore the nuances of modern Christian culture and the challenges of cultivating community while maintaining impact and relevance in the church. Join Tyler Vance, COO of Apollos, as he talks to church leaders from around the world to gain a deeper understanding of the Christian faith in a modern context. Push boundaries, change lives, create a more hopeful future.
Hey, welcome today. We have a super special friend of mine joining us. This is Blue, who runs a company called Studio C. Blue has been in the church space for a long time, and as a pastor on staff at a church, but also comes from a marketing background. Blue, why don't you kind of give us a better introduction for yourself than that today?
That's very nice of you. Thank you. And Tyler, thank you for having me on and talking with you. We were just saying before you hit record that we could just go have a conversation. We've done this 2 or 3 times, and the idea of just getting in and talking with that. But thank you again for inviting us on to now talk in front of other people and not just each other. So thank you. You know, my background, I wish I could tell you I had this perfect strategy and I scripted it and I wrote it all out. It wasn't quite that way. Right. I grew up in good old sort of humble upbringing in Arizona, hunting, fishing, football, baseball, that kind of guy. Anyways, long and short, I got a chance to go abroad as an exchange student and just sort of fell in love with what it did for me. It just made my worldview just quadruple. Right. And so my pursuit was to figure out how to fund a way to continue the international piece genuinely. So I ended up doing a good chunk of my undergrad as an exchange student, came back to do my master's, but then went over and did an internship. And all of this was, like I said, really just a way to figure out how to get back abroad. And so anyways, after my MBA, I was fortunate enough to get hired by a German company. It's a fairly large company called Daimler-Benz. They're the parent company of Mercedes. And, you know, I'm always hesitant to say this because people used to say, "Oh, do you love cars?" No, they were a way for me to get back to Germany, right, to do this. So I learned to love cars, but I loved, business and the international piece to it. But so anyways, I kind of grew up as an MBA. Everybody sort of takes 1 or 2 tracks, either finance or marketing seems to be the thing. I leaned into the marketing side. So I joined Mercedes. And what was funny is I thought, man, I'm going to do all these cool ads for Mercedes. And very quickly they said, that's not where we put our energy. We'd put our energy in something they call customer engagement marketing. So I know we'll talk about, engagement marketing here a little bit, but that's where it came from. And then, then the .com world hit and this whole idea of technology. So a buddy of mine was leading a project I got to help in. It was actually to kind of help build out Mercedes-Benz USA. He had actually hired a company that was a digital agency. So think ad agency that uses digital. I was actually then brought on board to head up our automotive practice there and kind of worked my way up into CEO of an agency. So, think we go out, we had clients like Toyota and Marriott and Chevron, but the idea was, how do you use this weird thing called the data and internet to drive really targeted messages? So you'll see, I've got a lot of that in that background that we're going to talk about. From there, I did some venture capital work, was fortunate enough to sell that business and go off and kind of help do some growth stuff. And so you'll see a lot of that make its way into my background of just how to scale and grow things. And anyways, long and short, how I ended up at a church from all of that stuff was every 7 years, my wife and I try to take a little bit of a break to just pause and what I say, sort of listen to the will of God in my life. I tend to run pretty fast. And if I don't slow down and shut up, I think I can miss some things. So one of our years off, we decided that we were going to try to serve the church for a year. And I was fortunate enough that a couple lead pastors at a church came in and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to do that with us." And so that's how I ended up being an XP inside of a church. And full transparency, all I did was take all that other stuff I'd learned in the marketplace and churchize it and bring it forward. So I was there for 5 years. And then, just recently, as you mentioned, stepped away to start a business called Studio C, which is to try to take all of those principles rather for one church to a whole bunch of churches.
Yeah. How do we help the local church out? Right. And I think that's a heartbeat of that. And so much of, I think many of our journeys is the way that God directs our steps in very unknowing ways, right? In the tapestry of backgrounds that come together to go, okay, he is investing in moving his church forward in ways that we never planned possible. And he's been doing that since he was taking the Israelites out of Egypt.
You know what's funny about that? You say it, Tyler, but I tell people, like, when they say, how do you connect with God, or where does he sort of reveal himself? And as strange as it sounds, it's through strategies like that. Because
Mm,
I can look at it and I can say, nobody's smart enough to come up with this stuff, right? It shows his divinity to me when I see this play out. And, as a guy looking back in hindsight, when I was saying I wasn't smart enough, what I am understanding is he was. And so
mm,
I've just been at least sort of obedient and following these ebbs and flows, but seeing where it all played out. I wasn't smart enough 30 years ago to have said, yeah, I should learn digital marketing to figure out how to do this so I could apply it to kingdom use. And
yeah.
so that's how he reveals himself to me quite a bit, is just seeing all of that play out.
Yeah. I think that's a funny parallel because I get the question a lot, like, you love technology. And it's like,
Yeah.
actually, I don't. I'm really passionate about the local church.
Right. Yep.
Technology just happens to be a vessel and a lever
No doubt.
we strategically need to pull to
Yep.
reach this generation.
I love it. Love it. Yeah.
And,
It's
and
great.
so same for
We,
you.
we
Uh,
do. We always say, in fact, I know we'll go into that I think actually technology is submissive to the strategy or the methodology we're trying to do. So it's just, as you said, it's a mean. And I've always come into that. We're not in this for technology. Nobody should be in it. We're in it for effectiveness and efficiency to, manage the mission. And that's what it helps us do.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
You began to talk about, hey, these are the strategies, these are the core
Yeah.
things we were building early on in the technology age that corporate America was using.
Yeah.
Sometimes people get a little weirded out when we start bringing those things into the local church.
Yeah.
Where have you found good transfer of that? You obviously have, and where are those places that people should listen into, should lean into?
Yeah, I love it. I think the first place I just started, and you and I talked about this previously, 10 years ago when I brought some of this to the church, even the word marketing was somewhat taboo. You threw that out, it was sort of like, whoa, are you boxing out the Holy Spirit? And so I had to actually kind of play in this idea that what I realized is that marketing had a tone in the church space of being manipulation. Marketing equals
Mm,
manipulation. And I had to say, I really don't, I've never seen marketing as that. I think of it as really, as you do this thing, it's sort of the purposeful and intentional way to communicate with somebody, right? It is communicating with intent and
yeah,
purpose along the way. It's all about, and obviously, getting the right message to the right person at the right time on the right channel, right? And I'm just trying to
that's it.
figure that out. So if we can get people understanding that we're not trying to manipulate somebody, we're trying to really communicate in a heartfelt way. I think that's a starting point. And it took a little while to get there. I mean, I'm super grateful that I think we're kind of over that hurdle a bit. I see a lot more. COVID did a great deal to open
Sure.
up receptivity to this for us, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
COVID changed a lot of church. You're correct. And then when COVID went away, a lot of churches forgot the lessons they learned. That's my poke at the local church as a whole. But we
I
can
agree.
we can we can relearn some things. We've
There's a
got the
comfort
neural
we slide
pathways
into.
built.
Yeah, I agree. But one of the areas where I saw it really transitioning well, and I don't even mean this funny, but I think we actually stole it not from the marketplace. I think we're stealing it back from the marketplace. I think the market stole it
Yeah.
from church, but it's this idea of engagement marketing versus prospect marketing. So roughly, and this is even outside of church, you can take somebody's life cycle, this marketing life cycle, you can divide it into two. And the top part is often called prospect marketing, right? Or some people call it the sales funnel. But the idea is there's somebody that's anonymous and we want to take them to some place where they're known, right? So we don't know each other, but we're going to get known. And then once somebody's known, or in the business world, once they've purchased a product, now they're a customer. I'd say in a
Sure.
church, now that they're a member, an attendee, what are the things we can do? How can we communicate with them to get them more engaged? Right. And what I learned is, through the marketplace, was that engagement marketing is almost 4 times more valuable than prospect marketing, especially in the long term. And I'll tell you what I mean. At Mercedes, we would spend about $1,200 to bring somebody new into the brand. So I take the ad budget, divide it by
Yeah.
first time buyers, about $1,200. Once they bought a car, we'd spend about $300 to get them to just love us, and do riding drives and swag and et cetera. If we did a good job on that, on average, they brought 4 people into Mercedes for us, right?
Wow.
So you spend 25% of the money, you get 4 times the return. But what I try to tell people, that person at the very bottom that was this advocate, we actually call them brand evangelists.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, we use the church term of an evangelist. So when I say we're bringing back engagement marketing, we're just bringing back the idea of building evangelists who are going to go out and be way more effective at bringing people to Christ than we are. Right.
So
So
break that down for me. And you've talked about a concept in some of our conversations about just the science of messaging, and you just
Yeah,
kind of hit on it there.
I,
But
I
can you
do.
can you go a layer deeper?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter where I go to. Usually when I go into a new organization, sometimes this is in the VC world, sometimes church, business, doesn't matter. I kind of look for clarity around what I'd call sort of the three core components of going to market, of taking something out. Just call them the three Ps, right? And it's the product, it's the placement, and it's the promotion. So if I
Mm,
look at the church even, and I hope people give me grace when I say this, we have our product, and that's like the weekend experience or small group ministry or serving and how we do this. And there's a lot of structure and intentionality around that. It's done really, really well in most places. Then you get into the placement or the distribution. How do I get that product into the heads of people? And we do a lot with our campuses and our online looks great. Then you get to the third, which is the promotion. How do I tell everybody how to consume that often product at that distribution place? It's like the Wild West, right? It's just sort of everybody doing this. And when I go back and I look at even, Bible colleges, they teach a lot on how to create a sermon. They can talk to you about what the environment should look like, and nobody's talking about how to use the science of messaging, right? There are people that went to school for a really long time to figure out what is the psychology of communicating with people and what is the science and the technology of effective ways to do that. So all I've been trying to do is take all of that and bring it to the table. So you have product, you have placement, and you have communication, or what, to be cute with a P, we call it promotion.
yeah. Okay. So that's the methodology behind that.
It is.
Peel back the curtain or
Yeah.
draw the lines a little clearer towards how's a pastor in a local church utilize that methodology? What are you guys doing, maybe even at Studio C, to help bring that to
Yeah.
life and cover some of the areas where maybe pastors, to your point, aren't learning in seminary, where they're not,
Yeah.
uh, they're just not thinking about it as clearly as they could.
Yeah, I love it. I always say that the intent's always the same. We want to grow, and if we can grow the church, because that's God's vehicle, then we can grow the kingdom. So we want to grow. We believe that growth happens most effectively through engagement, and we engage people by actually knowing them, right, and who they are, and then we can go through and match. So what I like to try to say is that think of what we do at Studio C as like a big GPS, right, to help churches. And if you're going to help give somebody guidance through their journey, through their life cycle, from not yet Christian to fully committed follower, disciple maker, there's a couple things you need to know. You got to know, first of all, the destination. Where are we trying
Mm,
to take them? What does that look like? And for me, that's this life cycle, right? And then I have to know where people are starting from. So if you tell
mm,
me, Tyler, like, hey, I want to go to New York. Now I know the destination. But if you're starting from Texas, it's very different directions than if you're starting from California, right? So that what I need to do is I need data. I need information about the people so that I can understand where their starting point is. And then at some point, I have to give you directions on when to turn right and when to turn left. I need something that does that. So for me, that's when we can talk into what this whole piece of what we do, where we build highly targeted messages to help people take a next step on their journey to the final destination of becoming a fully committed follower of Christ.
yeah.
So we use different types of tools to help people know where their members are in that journey. We use data to match them really intelligently to a step that they can do next. And then we have a messaging platform to tell them how to take that step and when to do it.
Yeah. Honestly, Blue, for years I've said, even at my time at Life Church, you can't pastor unknown people. And I know you guys have a similar kind of tagline that you use at Studio C: "Know your people, grow your people."
Yep.
Right, and so it's very much this heartbeat of, in order to actually steward the people that God has put in front of me as a pastor to shepherd,
Yeah.
I've got to know them.
Yep.
Today, what is true, the world that we live in, the opportunity that we have is greater than ever
Yeah.
to know people and know where they're at.
I agree. And if you know them, what we also have to understand is then we would shepherd them differently. What I mean by that
Mm,
is not everybody's at the same place and not everybody runs at the same pace. But often what we do is we just blast a message out to everybody and kind of hope, first of all, this is just even appropriate or even applies to this person. And then if it does, are they at the right pace or time to actually start taking this?
ooh,
And so the idea is knowing where they are, but knowing how fast they communicate, how fast their rhythm of life. I mean, we'd go out for years and say, hey, everybody get into a small group. Try to get a single mom with 3 kids under 5 to join a small group, right? At some point or another. Good luck. So is there another thing that she can do or things that we can work on? So the idea is, what I used to always say is, hey, my job is not to actually shepherd people. Our job as the comms was to get the pastors connected with the right people so that they can have a more intentional shepherding process with them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's this idea of knowing them, but then once you know them, communicating with them. That's the other part I say is not everybody gets, is communicated in the same style. I'm a short and sweet, get to the point, 3 on the Enneagram type of guy. Give me what you want me to do and let's go do it. My wife would appreciate a little bit more color and copy associated with that. So there's
Yeah.
also not just sort of the uniqueness of what you're saying, but then there's uniqueness of how you say it. Right. If we communicate with our next gen ministry, it's a whole lot of, different. I remember when I first got to the church, I just printed out a bunch of messages and it was so inconsistent. At one point I was, hey, Mr. Van Dyke, let's do these things. Another time it was, hey, dude. Right. And I would sort of step back and say the right use of the tone and appropriateness is important as well. So it's not just getting the right message to the person, it's delivering it with the right creative and the right copy and the right content as well.
Yeah. That sounds like it's amazing. And it also sounds like a lot of extra work for, I would say, pastoral teams that feel overworked and
Yeah.
overstaffed.
Right.
How do you navigate that as Studio C steps in to partner with churches?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, the whole reason that we even built what we are, what's called this a personalization engine, and part of this was to help those teams be more efficient and more effective in what they do. It should actually reduce this. If you start looking at the absolute number of communications that most churches are sending out from the various ministries and campuses, they're spending an enormous amount of time. So what we're fans of is saying, hey, we can centralize and help you centralize some of that communication. So we get it to the right person, but it actually reduces the volume of work you need to do. Right. I think that's one of the misnomers that I saw. I feel like when I first got to the church, they felt like if I just hit them hard and heavy enough with this, they'll eventually concede and start doing it. Right. And what we found was, hey, multiple messages is not necessarily the answer. You actually start to aggravate people. And the other part of it is people will start to tune you out. Right. The example, and you've heard me give this, I've given it before, but when I first joined, I got a message that said, hey, Blue, join, time to join a small group. And I'm on staff. And I just printed it out. I was like, I've been in a small group for 16 years. I've been leading one for 11. So what happened is this message now told me not only that you don't know me, it told me that I can ignore your future emails. So I'm just going to opt out and start hitting delete, right, as we do these things. So the idea is by sending targeted messages at a centralized form, we can reduce the volume of your staff and have a better impact on top of it. And the way we're going to do that is some of this technology.
Yeah.
Right. So we've touched into that. We have a data warehouse. So we bring all that information in for you. And now you don't need a developer to do anything. Right. This is developerless messaging. Right. So I can now have a comms person or anybody who's just used to writing a message come in and create an audience, figure out who they want to talk to. We have galleries of information. All the churches we've worked with have given us permission to reuse some of their best messages. So people can just grab off the shelf messages, hit their tailored audience and send it off without ever having to have a developer write code or do anything.
That's amazing. And I think if people are wondering, how does Apollos fit in with this Studio C thing, and why would Apollos be having a conversation, Blue, with you from Studio C?
Love it.
We feel like we have one of the best platforms to deliver the data that's needed to power all of this. And so, as you guys have worked with us, what's one of the things that maybe has stood out in the midst of that?
I love it. I would say, and glad you kind of got to that, was there's a couple different things that have to happen. I have to have all this data so I know where people are. That's kind of the data warehouse. Then I have to have something that layers on top of that and lets us create segmented audiences. So we call that our personalization engine that layers on top of that. Then I have a messaging platform. At some point or another, I have to actually say something with an image and a picture and a word. But then I have to distribute that to somebody. And in our opinion, one of the best distribution channels for your members is the mobile app by far. So we make a real distinction that when you're talking to prospects, people who don't go to your church, right? The best tool is your website. Right? And we even did a study and we found that people go to somewhere between 12 and 15 different websites before they'll ever show up at a church, but they don't know you, you don't know them, and they're just kind of prospecting to see if this is a church they'd consider going to. Well, once they're a member and they're in, we want what's called a post-gate experience. Now I'm getting a little bit geeky in the marketing world, but if I don't know you, we think of that as you're on the sidewalk. I'm in my yard and you're on the sidewalk. We don't know each other and you're just cruising by and I'm trying to get your attention. If you come through my gate though and you're in my yard, I kind of want to know you. So with a mobile app and your mobile app, people have to log in. They got to tell us who they are. Well, now we're in what's called a post-gate experience where I know you and I can continue to message with you, right? I think what you guys have done that's incredibly well is that you help take the experience on the mobile app beyond just the Sunday, right?
Mm.
Where if we say that we want a 7-day experience, we want to get back, in my opinion, to start mirroring sort of the early church where we're not replacing interactions, but we're enhancing it. We're enhancing the
Yes.
engagement. We're seeing one-on-one connectivity and we're in a nice daily rhythms with Bible reading plans and prayer plans and you name it. And you guys have nailed this with the daily habits that you have and some of the others. So what happens is we can now start specializing and targeting that
Mm.
on a regular day-to-day basis between the collaboration of us two is we can now start saying, well, Blue's reading plan might be different than this, and we can deliver it specifically and start getting really, really intentional with those two pieces.
Without an additional staff member doing
Without
that
anybody
work.
additional, correct. Or new
Right.
technology. It's really just these two interacting, and working together to deliver that. Yep.
Yeah. And something you said, I'll just put it in a different terminology. You talked about the gated experience. Profile creation is the new standard of what a communication card is. So if you look 20 years ago in the local church, you spent, Monday morning staff meetings going over communication cards and who's new, who do we not know,
Right.
and then also who we're praying for.
Yep.
But now we have a chance to do that digitally, which powers all of the things that you're talking about. The communication card that is of today is actually a profile creation. And as a church, we need to start thinking about it in that context and in those terms.
Yep. And I love that because in addition to that, one of the things we can do with this new platform is we can actually help enrich and hygiene that data, right? That comes
Mhm.
in. So what happened in the past, somebody fills out a card and it's sort of one and done. If they change their email address, we don't know. Who knows what's going on? Then at the end of the year, someone's trying to do contribution statements. They're chasing down addresses and everybody's going a little bit crazy. Well, what's great about this is we're using the tool to actually say, hey, here's what we know about you. Has anything changed? Click and let us know. And people are starting to actually clean their own data and enrich their own data. And then from there, we just get more and more targeted.
Yeah,
So
let's zoom in on
sure.
a really just tangible use case of that. Let's talk about baptism. And you talk about, like, I have a story of, getting a baptism letter from one of my staff members that was underneath me for a family member that was baptized, and that family member didn't get baptized. And it was just an episode of really unclean data within the local church, right? So
Sure.
one of the ways we're able to do it on that onboarding process is, hey, we don't have a record of baptism for you. Can you tell us, have you been baptized?
Yeah.
Yes or no? What tell us a little bit more about that. And then from that can power your ability to do unique messaging for that. That might be the right next step for them. And you guys have messaging and that kicks into gear to lead people to that step.
Well, what I love about it is then by collecting it, it gives you the ability to continue to communicate. So what we like to say, there's two things. One, we want them to take steps. We want people to do a call to action. But the other thing is I just want to recognize you. And both are important. I'm recognizing you as a member of this community and I'm encouraging you to do something. It's the equivalent of what I used to stand outside the auditorium and people would come by and I'd say, Tyler, it's so good to see you. How's the family? What do you do? Why aren't you in a group? Right? Or why aren't you doing this? And I kind of harass it a little bit. Well, I did too. I recognize you. I know you. I know your family. I care about you. And I'm going to encourage you to grow in your faith. We need both.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is when you collect sort of that baptism date and that time, what we can do is we can go in one time and you build this and it lasts forever and build sort of a baptism message. So I'll go into the system. There's no lists anymore. I'm just calling, the data every 4 hours. And I'm looking for people. And one of the messages we build is say, hey, look for everybody who was baptized on this date. And then send them a message every year that says, congrats on the best decision of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just call the data and everybody who hits that date and, for the next 7 days, they see the message. When they fall out of that time frame, system pulls it, spins up another one, but the comm team never touches it. Now we've collected a baptism date, which is important to encourage people for their next step, but it's also given me an opportunity to recognize them at least once a year to say, congrats on this really cool decision.
Yeah.
Right. And that one specifically, I love because nobody else has that data.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody on the planet knows my birth date at this stage and, sends me a happy birthday wish from stuff I could care less about. But nobody really has the baptism except the church. And it just gives us great opportunities to really say, hey, I see you. Because do we do? As a
Yeah.
church, we see them. But as it gets bigger, it's harder to say that. So it gives us an opportunity to say, I see you and I care about you.
Well, and I really love the point. When we don't do it well, the cost is greater than not doing it at all.
Yeah.
And we're
I
not
try
doing
to,
it well in a lot of cases. But at the same time, I'm picking up my mobile device, data would say, over 100 times a day.
yeah, right.
So
Right. I call that church in their pocket.
it
That's what I like
is.
to see it, and they have it all the time. And so this is another reason why I love the mobile app is it's a post-gate experience, but I love it really because it's church in their pocket. I get to use some of the devices. And our whole goal working with you guys, and I love that we've done is we're trying to turn, what a lot of churches think of their mobile app as a brochure, an extension of sort of their website. And we're saying it's not. It's a great opportunity to be a member toolbox, the place they pull out and engage with their church and whatever that means, from prayer to sermon notes to giving to signing up for a group to getting their content. We turn it in this highly effective sort of toolbox is what I'd say. And,
Yeah.
and that's where things start getting really, really cool.
Well, and as an attender of a local church, I want that for myself.
Yeah.
And you and I've talked. My kids are in golf. I was at a junior
Yeah.
PGA event yesterday with
Yep.
my daughter, and I have a member in my small group that's going through some health stuff and beginning some rehabilitation, and I'm wanting to check on them. I could do that through GroupMe or through whatever. As a church, why shouldn't that be in the community or in the sense of what my church is offering for me to connect with this small group? And then beyond that, as a church, don't you want to know what those interactions are?
Yeah.
And so, like you talked about prayer for a second,
Yeah.
we love the ability to give prayer an instant response, right? Our prayer,
Hmm.
our prayers are typically have a response in under 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But I can also deliver you as a pastor all the sentiment analysis about
Yeah.
prayer.
Right. So now we understand what's going on in the congregation and I can lean into that. Plus the other thing that I love is it's a way to activate the members. Right? When I think about ways that we've seen great engagement, it's when we've said, hey, listen, we're all part of the priesthood of believers, and we all carry some responsibility for leaning into the community and supporting each other. And so when you let people participate in prayer, like you used for example, I love that because it's no longer saying, hey, leave that to the professionals. We can all participate. We can all jump in and help support with this. And I think it's a great way to give everybody something other than kind of just, old days, sit down, be quiet and listen.
Yeah.
It's now creating some sense of participation.
It just brings church to life. And do you say like, this is old history that we're
Yeah.
bringing back to life. We're just
Right.
utilizing technology to do that.
Right.
All of that to say, though, you guys are using data in a significant way to power Studio C and the actions and the things that you guys are doing. In the same token, in the same thing you talked about in marketing,
Yeah.
you're seeing the shift as churches adopt data, as they get better educated about good and bad uses of data and things like
Yeah.
that. What would you offer as advice, as counsel for churches that are navigating that? And then maybe a little bit more of how Studio C is
Yeah.
using data.
As far as navigating it, I even had a rule at the church when we were running this. I was saying that if you want data for you, we're going to question it. But if you're using it to shepherd them or serve them, then let's talk about it.
Mm,
Right. So the saying that I used to always have this around all the time was, if you knew, what would you do? Okay. And so you need both sides of those. If we're going to go out, it actually, can cost some money to try to use data and manage it and pull insights out of it. But let's not ask for an insight if we don't have a plan to actually use that
yes.
insight to manage or help shepherd somebody. So that would be my first thing is don't ask for data for just the sake of data. Data should help inform sort of a direction or something that you want to do.
Blue,
Um,
I have a term for that
yeah.
that a mutual friend of ours, Amber, and I laugh about. It's called being data drunk, where you
Data
just
drunk. I love it.
consume as much data as possible with no
No real value that's being brought from it.
no value that's being brought from it.
I love it. If you don't
And
mind, I
so
may steal it, but I love it. Yeah, that is. And so we see that. What I'd say is data should help inform some decisions. And the goal with this is that we're trying to help you be as personal and relatable as you possibly can, the same way you would if we could have a face-to-face interaction. Right. We just can't do it. And I try to tell people even where it came from, as I told you, like when I'd stand out there and I'd have that conversation with you and I'd ask you, how's this going? How's the family? What are you doing? That's great. And it actually works better. The problem is 40 people blew past me that I
Yeah.
never had a chance to have that conversation with. So all we say is, how do I use data to have that conversation when I'm not available live and in face to do it? Right.
Yeah.
And so I told people when we first started this, what we're building is a digital version of that handshake. We're not trying to circumvent that, but we just don't have enough staff to hit everybody to do that. So as you
Mm.
grow larger and larger, you're going to fill that more. I think there's some core things you have to look at when you're kind of doing this is how are we going to collect the data?
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a difference between what's called first party and third party. Third party is somebody else knows something about somebody and I try to buy it from them. That data that's becoming, less and less available. It's becoming illegal in all 50 states. They're following California's, lead on this with the Consumer Protection Act. And so what we say is we want first party data, a relationship with they have each other, but then I've got to be able to track that. So I think there's things like the data warehouse that you need. You need a church management system, I'd say is a great starting place to go in there and collect some of this. But you have data from all kinds of sources, right? Everybody at my church take a spiritual gifts test.
Yeah.
We're working with people that are taking other kind of personality assessments and these things. We want to use all of that, right? We want to stick it in so that I can just be the most personal and intentional I can. So data warehouse, you need some way to sort all of that data. It's no good if it's just sitting out there. Right. And the problem what people don't get is all that data is usually stored differently,
Sure.
graph and equal and this and that. So we need to normalize it and bring it in. You need a messaging platform. You need the distribution channels. We couldn't do what we're doing without the mobile app. You guys have to provide it. It just, I don't have a way to distribute that, to get that out to that. And then at the end of the day, what I do is I take all that data and I stick a tool on top of it, like an analytics tool or a BI tool. We call it Church IQ. And that's a way to just help people sort of curate that data in a way that I know what lever to pull.
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell people. Like it should inform where we need to lean in a little bit or do something. So then we just build out a whole bunch of visualizations, which are really just ways to say, what do I do with all of this?
Yeah. Yeah. We used to have a axiom on our wall with my good friend Terry Storch, and it said data has a seat at the table.
Yep.
It's by no means the head of the table. That's still the job of the Holy Spirit, but data should have a seat at the table in informing decisions and how we engage with people, right? And that's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah, we used to always say, listen, data is going to be submissive and we're going to be submissive to the prodding of the Holy Spirit. But if we're unclear, then data helps bring clarity to those moments where we're confused or lack of clarity. And so that's what we said is, hey, it's never going to force us to do something that we don't feel we're in alignment with by any means. But man, it sure can help us bring some data. And I think that you can even take that data, so people don't get overcomplicated, and you can almost divide it into like 3 areas, right? So I like to look at data, what I call historical data.
Yep.
And I use that data to just look back, and it helps tell me like how many people were in group, how many people are attending, how many people are serving. It's still valuable to understand if we're moving in the right direction or not. Then I have what I call insight data. How do I take that data and help it provide insights? So the difference to that would be, yeah, I know how many people went to group and I know how many attended church where we were, but with this segment of people, how long from a first time visit till a first step? And what is that typical first step? So now I know if people that are like Tyler typically go to church for 92 days before they get into group, now I know when to start communicating with you appropriately about what to do. So that's just insight. And then you can get really technical, and this is where the fun starts. And that's what I call foresight data. How do we use all of that data to predict future behavior? Right. So one of the campaigns we run with our churches is we call it our predictive attrition report. So who do we predict is going to leave the church in the next 6 months and why they're going to leave so that I can start talking to them today? Yeah. Right? I got tired of is I'd get a report 6 months after somebody was gone that said, we've lost all these people in the church. And then they've been gone for 6 months and I'd have to go try to crawl back and figure out why and what I can do about it. And so it just used to frustrate me. I said, I don't want to call people 6 months after they left. I want to call them 6 months before they go. So I have a chance to shepherd them and work with them. That's where that data can get really fun to kind of try to predict some future behavior and get ahead of it.
Yeah.
So I think you can look at all 3 of those. I think the predictive is a little further down the road, but let's start with hindsight and insight data and then go from there.
Yeah. And I mean, once again, what you're talking about sounds incredibly complex,
Mm.
but the power of the partnership of Studio C is that it's an easy lift. You
Thank you.
get to the finish line without feeling like you've got to reorient teams or,
Yeah.
hire a SQL developer, which you might not even know what that is.
Right.
That's the power of the partnership of Studio C
Mm.
in your church. All of these experts are coming alongside of you to do that
Yeah.
for you. And you guys see some incredible results when you step in with a local church, and
We
you
do.
have incredible stories of this being impactful to not only weekend attendance, but the engagement drivers of the churches that you guys work with, right?
Yeah, it's, I so appreciate you saying that. Here's what would happen, and both of us, we spent our time in ministry. We came from what I'll call well-resourced organizations, churches. They were large, and we got to do things, which was great. Well, just by the nature of being a big church, is we'd have several pastors come in and visit, and I would talk to them about what we're doing, and then I would explain to them how many staff I had hired to do this and how much it costs, and they throw up a little bit. They'd say, "Well, you could have led with that and saved me the hour of this meeting,
Yeah,
right?"
yeah,
So I remember when we came out, I said, I don't want it to be this area where people have to come up with seven figures and hire 30 people to kind of pull this off. So the whole idea is really this idea of like a SaaS, a software as a service, and you bring it in and you make it available to a lot of churches. And I'm really grateful because other, large churches that we're working with have said, "Hey, listen, I don't want this available for just the big guys. We've got to make it available for everybody." So the way we can do that is hire all these people that have marketplace skill sets, but love the Lord. And what I don't
yeah,
know that we all understand is there's a lot of people out there that love the Lord, want to serve the kingdom, and didn't even know there was a way to do it outside of working for a church, right? That you don't have to work for a church to still feel like you're in the fight. And so we've collected all of those people, their hearts in it, feels
yeah,
like they're on mission right now. They're certainly being obedient and they're bringing those skills. Only we're able to do it once for a bunch of churches that, makes it way easier and more affordable to get on board to do.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the same. Honestly, that's the same story for us. Um, I do remember another leader at a church coming in and Blue, the conversation was, Tyler, this is fantastic. I could never do this. And it
Yeah.
broke my heart. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
but at what we're doing with Apollos, you can. You have a whole team behind you of developers that are world class, that once, like you said,
Yeah.
they live on mission because they get to give their life to something that they never had the chance to do.
Yep.
And they are in the church and of the church and live and
Yeah.
breathe the church, and what we get to do and make that experience, world-class experience, available. So very much in tune with that.
I actually think we're supposed to do that, Tyler. I mean, this is just me, but even when I was at Mercedes, we built cars. So we hired somebody that was good at building websites and mobile apps, and we hired somebody that was good at doing digital messaging. And we understood that we were going to keep an area of expertise, but nobody's going to hire Studio C to help them write their sermon, right? That's not the area of expertise we have. But I have guys who've been doing this for 20 and 30 years. So let's bring that expertise to the table and
Mm,
not be afraid to partner with people where they have a gifting and you've got a gifting. I like to think of it as, God gave us all this tool belt and we
sure.
all collected these tools over the years. What our goal is if we all get thrown on an island together and we have to build a house, nobody's going to say, everybody bring their hammer, right? We don't need 30 hammers. I need a saw and a hammer and a drill and whatever else. So what we should be doing is looking at how do I complete the entire tool belt with gifts that you may have and I may have. So when we bring them to the table together, we've got a better set of things to work with.
Yeah. And the wisdom of that, right? The wisdom of that. Now, I do want to hit,
Sure.
this is pure self-promotion, but also
Love it.
such a cool story. We recently partnered at the beginning of this year to launch a church in Florida,
We did.
both as
Yep.
an Apollos customer and a Studio C customer, as
Yeah.
day one. And we
Yeah.
helped to tell this story more through a case study that we're working on, because it's a phenomenal story. But
Yep.
Journey Church,
Yep.
one of the great things there we saw from our perspective, and this helped
Yep.
inform the work of Studio C, 25% of their weekend attendance created a profile within the first 30 days. I'm going to say that again. As a pastor, they knew 25% more of the people sitting in their seats than they did before they had a partnership with Apollos and Studio C, and that happened just within 30 days.
Yeah. Think of how many connection cards you'd have to try to get filled out, right? At that point or another, as you were saying, it's incredible. This is now, you talk about knowing, needing to know, match, and tell these people. We now know. And I want to get back to Journey on this, but we went live. They've given me permission to do this. We work with Highlands Church as well. And when we went live on the Monday after they went live, they called me and they actually said something like, "Hey, Van Dyke, we thought something was broken. We got 8,000 new active members, or about 8,000, 7,000 and change new active members were added, but we didn't add 8,000 people a day." What would happen was whenever they had no communication with anybody, no touch point, no anything, they flipped them to an inactive status, right? If that was over a period of time. When people went in, they would go in and edit their profile, what you're talking about right now. They had 8,000 people going to clean their data. That was now a touch point that I now know you're still engaged in some capacity with the church. So the system automatically flipped them back to active.
Yeah.
But you just uncovered 8,000 people they didn't know they were talking to. In Journey's case, you uncovered this 25% that haven't done, we went through, and I have to look at my notes on this stuff, but it was pretty incredible that we actually had dashboard views, which was great, just in the month of April. So we're now past this a little bit.
Yeah.
Unique views, people who are touching this, that was 112% of their reported AWA. What that means is they had more people than were showing up at church engaging on their mobile app right now than were actually showing up in any sort of a service time that was doing this.
Yeah.
So now you're connecting with people who aren't even in the building.
We see that across all of Apollo's mobile apps, right? The average person is attending on the weekend 1.4 times a month. We've heard this stat for years, right? Now go back to, they're picking up their mobile phone 100 times a day.
Right.
Let's get there. And so we are seeing across all of our churches a higher app usage per week than they're seeing on the weekend.
Yep.
And that's because we're keeping people engaged. One of the things that technology has to do, and this is where a lot of people miss. So I'm going to step on toes here, and we're going for it.
Love it.
It doesn't add any value.
Yeah.
Your sermon being on an app does not add value to the attender. But if they're getting a message about a small group that they actually have a likelihood of joining, it's adding value. If they're able to pray for someone else in their community or receive prayer, it's adding value. We have to build technology that adds value so that we can, in return, continue adding value.
Yeah, I love it. We did a study of people who weren't going to church, little focus group. And it was, hey, when you're considering a church, what are the things you're looking for? Is you're going to come in and you're going to actually evaluate it. So you've done your consideration and then you show up and you're going to go to a church and you're going to evaluate this church. What is the thing that you're evaluating was kind of the question that's going to determine whether you stay or don't stay and where you're going to go. And by far, the largest thing was, I'm just waiting. I'm evaluating to see the ask from the church, what they want from me. Okay. And what somebody equated it to, it's kind of the equivalent of like going to a timeshare where you're just waiting to see what they're going to ask of you and what your obligations are. And so what we've said is we need to switch the equation of, it's not what we want from you when you come to church, it's what we want for you. And I'm not, so what I'm trying to do is deliver you into a transformational state with the Lord. And I'm going to do that by hopefully getting you involved in small group and learning to serve and give of your resources. And yes, hear the word and get into the word, but be in community. And all of that is, we're not asking for a transaction like an attendance. I'm asking for a transformation that can only come from your engagement and your relationships that you have through this. So it's what we want. That's what I always say is, if we're going to create messages and we're going to create call to actions, they're going to be designed to say, here's what I want for you, not what I need from you.
And those things, when done well digitally throughout the week, cause weekend attendance to increase because people want to be a part of something. And they want to show up for something that they are a part of.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Tyler, I'll say it. I've always long believed that both attendance and giving were byproducts of good engagement.
Oh,
Okay. And so what
yes.
I've done is for the last 2.5, almost 3 years, I've taken our top 3 churches with engagement. This doesn't mean they're our largest or anything else. It's just their members are using their app a lot to engage in the messages we're sending to them. And as we've tracked these guys over time, you see this parallel between engagement and attendance and giving. It's beautiful. It's like this weird chart that just does this nice parallel. So it's growing with it. But on average, those 3 churches, their attendance is up 25% and their giving is up 57%. Right. So we didn't focus on giving and attendance. We focused on engagement. But because it's a byproduct, we saw growth in both those areas at pretty significant numbers.
Yeah. I can tell you our data behind the scenes shows that if you engage with prayer,
Mhm.
you are more likely to click the give button within our app. Duh.
That's great. Yep.
Right? When
Yeah.
we're moving people closer to the heart of Jesus, they
Yep.
reflect that in
Yeah.
every area. It's
Yep.
not siloed.
I love it.
We know that.
We
Journey
do.
has
Well,
been a great case study and working relationship. I wanna we could spend a ton of time there, and I appreciate the partnership. And if people want to know about it, we'll have more coming out about
love it.
that.
Love it.
I want to rapid fire a couple questions to end
You got it.
us today. Most underrated communication tool.
I had to divide this honestly between, I got to divide this between online and offline. All right. So
Okay.
offline, I know this sounds crazy. Ask meaningful questions. That sounds so rudimentary on this, but ask meaningful, targeted questions of people and let them engage with you. So I think that that's the offline that I'd have with that. And we do that, kind of just in having fun little conversation tools online. And I know it's kind of the vogue thing to say right now, but we are using AI on a regular basis to create our content. Here's the point that I want people to understand for this. The secret behind all of this is not the content creation. Content creation has become somewhat of a commodity. It's the strategy. Who should I talk to? When should I talk to them? On what channel should I talk to them on and why? That's what the personalization engine does that we do. The content to do it, I can find people in there to do it. So we're using AI to create a ton of our content. It's
That's
the
a hot take.
strategy that you need people for.
This is not on the list. Favorite AI social media thing you've seen
Mm,
lately? There's a lot of them
I'm
going
using
around.
Yeah, I'm using Claude right now quite a bit, and I've seen it. It's great. So it'll produce some imagery and some other things for us that are all in sync. Part of what we do, and I know you didn't ask about this either, but what I really like about it is we actually build messages, journeys, right? So instead of a single message, this is what I want to try to tell people. Instead of just saying, "Hey, Tyler, get in a group," what happens is I have to create a journey with you, and I may invite you to join group on your dashboard. But if you've clicked on that, then I want to send you an email to tell you what to expect. And then I'm going to send you a text message the night before group starts to remind you to show up. And I'm going to create this journey. So
Yeah.
what you can find now is AI to help you kind of build some of these journeys out with the right rhythms and times and everything else to kind of display those. I looked at the last rolling 12 months of the churches we work with. They took 4.6 million steps.
Wow.
Okay. So the churches, so somebody that wasn't in group got in groups, started giving, but I delivered over 14.7 million messages to get those 4 million steps, right? So it's not Tyler, get in group. Okay, Blue, right? I've got to encourage you and I've got to take you on a communication journey. So that's part of
Golly.
what I think is an important component too. And Claude's been helping us a lot with that.
Yeah, yeah. Last one. What gives you hope about the future of church engagement?
I I am a big First of all, I'm very hopeful. I think churches are getting this idea, to be honest with you, that people are longing for authentic, intimate relationships with their church. And I know that may sound a little bit, but I think that engagement isn't just about bigger events, getting more people to show up. It's about more intentional moments with people to help them know that you understand them, that it's walking with them kind of where they are, and that it's personal to me and you can shepherd me even when there's thousands of us in this room.
Yeah.
And it really is. And I'm starting to see the church get that. They see that. And I see the longing for that. I used to have to preach on that and try to express why that was so important. But there is this hunger that's out there that gives me absolute hope for it. Right on its heels, and I have to throw it in, is people are understanding the need for personalization.
Sure.
Right. There's a thing out there called shotgun marketing where we just blast a message out. Right. And I think that people are really, and you said it earlier, it's not just neutral, it's actually counterproductive. So I think I'm starting to feel hope that people are realizing I got to stop doing that. I got to stop just blasting a message out to everybody. And I need to start being intentional to show people that I actually do care and I actually do know them, because they do. I've never met a pastor yet that doesn't care. we just inadvertently communicate that we don't by how we message. And so I'm
Yes.
seeing this merging back together of those two, and both of those give me really big hope.
I would agree with that. I think there's a buzz around that, and pastors that feel the burden to do it also feel better equipped, or they have better resources or tools in the marketplace to help them accomplish that. I'll go back to, I think Studio C is the great choice in order to do that. If you're a pastor looking for, hey, how do I engage my people better? Studio C's got to be a great partnership with you. They're a great partnership for Apollos and what we do as we look at daily rhythms and daily habits impacting people. We really want them to still continue to take a next step. Studio C powers that in the churches that we work with together, and it's a great partnership for us. Blue, thank you for investing your time today. I'm sure we have 20 other things we could talk about, 15 of them maybe hot button topics that we stayed pretty generic today. I've actually kind of pat both of us on the back, because as we get together, we can kind of get some hot takes. And so thank you for your investment in time, and so much appreciate the partnership you have with Apollos. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And I really do. Getting on the fight with you has been a joy to be in battle with you. So thank you for that.
Have a great day.
All
See
right,
you guys.
Bye-bye.